Hello, my name is Kim Martman, and this is Introduction to Excel. And the book goes over the 2016 version, and this is part 3 in the book, Data Formatting and Mathematical Operations. And I am on page 31. So while the book goes over the 2016 version, I am using a more recent version than 2016, but the book is compatible with many different versions. So don't panic if your screenshots in the book do not exactly match your screen, or if your screen does not match the screen in this video. So the theme of part 3 is data formatting and mathematical operations. And Excel doesn't just store data, it has tools to analyze it and give you information you can use. That's a very important function of Excel. It has some built-in formulas that are easy to use for basic tasks. It takes the guesswork out of that quite a bit. And you can also do some pretty complex mathematical operations. But since this is a beginner class, we're not going to do anything too complex. I might make some side videos on a few different functions though. So the objectives for this chapter, we're going to format cells for the data they contain, because there are different types of data like time and date and monetary values and things like that. We're going to discuss how an empty cell does not necessarily equal 0. Excel processes that differently. Some very basic mathematical operators and mathematical functions. The order of operations, copying, pasting, and cutting, and also deleting data. So going over to page 32, it's about data formatting. And there are 3 types of data in Excel. And formatting your data properly is critical if you are using formulas for calculations. It is easy if you're not paying attention to make a mistake on a formula and then it comes back with something you don't want or an error message. So values are numbers, and values also include dates. And by default, a value is aligned to the right of the cell. So you can see in column C where the minutes are, and in column F where the quantities are, that the digits or the values are aligned to the right and they're touching the right side of the cell. There are many different formats for numbers, such as time or currency. But if the data is too long to fit in a cell, Excel will display a row of pound signs, which looks scary. When you first see it, you're not quite sure what it is, but all it means is you have to widen the cell to accommodate the number. Formulas are another form of data, and those are instructions to manipulate or perform the mathematical functions on data, and we're going to get into that later. And then there's text, which includes labels. They do not have value, they're words, and they cannot be used in mathematical operations. If the data is too long to fit in the cell, the extra characters split into the adjacent cell to the right. They kind of spill over if that cell is empty, but if it contains data, it will just be cut off. It's just not visible, it's still there. So just like when you get the pound signs, you would just widen the cell to view all the characters. Number formats are important because Excel can perform functions on numerical data, but the results can contain a mistake if the number format is wrong. So for example, monetary values have 2 decimal places to the right, like $2.45. They typically have only 2 places to the right of the decimal, so formatting the number as currency tells Excel to round decimals to the nearest hundredth and display 2 zeros even if the value is an even dollar amount. So that way you just type in 4, it sticks a $sign in front of the 4, and then .00 for $4. Excel will also automatically format cells based on the content you enter, but the content must be formatted exactly. It's very picky about this. So I'm going to do this exercise on bottom of page 32 to demonstrate how spaces, dashes, slashes, and colons change how Excel applies number formats. So I am here in the worksheet in the practice tab, and I am on cell A9, and I am just going to type plain number 9 by its little self. And then I'm going to hit the tab key, 9 o'clock, 9, oops, I hit shift too soon, 9:00, and then tab, and then 9 o'clock p.m. with the P touching the last 0, tab, 9 o'clock space p.m. Now I'm going to go over to page 33. Now I'm going to go over to cell E9, so tab, and type in $9. So now let's discuss, I'm just going to tab over so you can kind of see the formatting. Let's discuss the automatic formatting that Excel has applied. So I'm going to click back on A9. And in the number group, you can see it up here in the ribbon. There is general. It says general. There's a drop-down menu next to it, but it says general. And that just means that's the default format. There's no really special formatting for general. It's just there. It's just no specific format. That's the technical definition of it. But when I go to B9, it says custom. But I used a non-standard format. So that's why it didn't say time, it said custom, because it's not quite sure. So it will still display the time how I entered it, but the official time format does hours, minutes, and seconds. So 9:00:00 a.m. You can see up here in the formula bar up on the top, if you can see my cursor, that's how it displays. So it's assuming it's 9 a.m. And that's a quick way to make sure Excel understands what I intend. But you can format dates and times to display in different ways. So let's go over to page 34. So here's custom, and below it, it says number, and here's the dialog launcher, which is a little arrow, the dialog box launcher. And now you can see it comes up with all sorts of different layouts here. There's general, number, currency, accounting along the left side here. Date, time, percentage, fraction, scientific. So that's when it kind of gets fancy right here. Text, special. So that's it when I'm doing a spreadsheet and I want to type in zip codes or phone numbers, that makes sure it automatically formats it as a phone number if I type in 9 digits, or custom. So you can see all sorts of different layouts here. Here's some layouts for dates and some times. So all sorts of different layouts, dates and times. But I'm going to pick this H:MM, which means hour, minute, minute. You can see in the sample it says 9 o'clock. I'm going to click cancel to close the dialog box. So now I'm going to go over to C9, which is 9 o'clock p.m. with no space. You can see how it's touching the left side, and it's because the 0 and the P are touching each other. So it is reading it as text. It is very picky about that. But then when you get into programming languages, they all are. So in cell D9, there is a space between the time and PM, so Excel aligns it to the right and considers it to be a number. You don't have to worry about capitalizing PM, even though that's what I did in the example, because if Excel recognizes it as a time format, it'll capitalize it for you. It'll recognize it. So of course, the 2 PM time entries don't look that much different at a glance, but text entries are automatically aligned to the left of the cell, whereas numbers are aligned to the right. So you can see here where this considers it to be a text. Now in cell E9, for something a little bit different, you can see I have the $9 in cell E9. So you can see at the top, when we go up to the number section in the ribbon, it says currency. It has detected that I am meaning $9, it's that dollar sign, so it detects, okay, there's currency. So it has figured that out. On to page 35. If you are wanting to do maybe a foreign currency, I'm going to go to this launcher here by number again. You see the little dialog box launcher. And here is some different ways to do it. Now with accounting, it will do the parentheses and all that, and we're going to get into accounting in a later exercise. You can adjust the decimal places and you can adjust the symbol. There's all sorts of different ones here. So you can see going down a lot of dollar signs here, but you can do the pound, Japanese yen, all sorts of stuff here. Here's the euro, all the euro countries. So many. I'm just going to stick with dollars and hit OK. Now in the middle of page 35, it talks about how Excel just wants to format your data. So this is like if you are texting or writing something on your phone and the phone just decides something for you and makes an autocorrect mistake. Excel will do that too, although it's not as funny. But if you're not careful, it will do something like an autocorrect mistake. So for example, if you have some dashes between numbers, it might assume it's a date, even if it's not your intention. So here are some general guidelines to prevent it from developing such a mind of its own. So all entries that begin with a letter of the alphabet are considered text and are formatted as general entries. Any mixture of numbers and letters with no space between is considered text. So that's like the 9 o'clock p.m. with no space. So 1 Jan as one word is text, but 1 space Jan is recognized as a date. It's January 1st. If you have a number that you want Excel to treat as text, such as a part number, you can type an apostrophe in front of it at the beginning of it again. And then it will not display or print the apostrophe, but it will align it to the left. And Excel will assume that 1/3 means January 3rd of the current year. Now to display a fraction, so for example, I'm going to go into cell I1, and here's 1/3 here. It did convert that to January 3rd. You can see up here, 1/3/2020. And I'll delete that. But now I'm going to click back on that cell. There's custom. I'm going to tell it fraction, just for this cell. I only have this cell highlighted. If you want the whole column, you have to highlight the column. And I'm going to type in 1/3 again, and it leaves it that way. It also shows you the decimal value of it right here in the formula bar. So sometimes in percentages I found are like that too. It's just easier if you're going to format a percentage to set the format like that first and then type. But again, I have another example. We're going to get into more depth later on in the class, in the book. So on the bottom of page 35, blank or 0, and there is an example on the bottom of page 35. So Excel treats blank cells as non-existent in formulas. And this can create errors in formulas like averages. So as shown in the example on page 35 on the bottom of the page, the average of B2, C2, and D2, which is shown in E2, is incorrect. Since cell C2 is blank, Excel did not include it when it calculated the average. So if it's a 0, just put 0, don't leave it blank. Otherwise, it's going to mess up your formula. And you can see going over to page 36, on the top of page 36, there is an example of how the data changed once they added the 0 in cell C2. So now in the middle of page 36, so calculations with formulas and math operations. So formulas are used to perform calculations on data. Excel can perform simple or extremely complex engineering and scientific calculations, which, since this is a basic class, we're not going to get into anything very fancy. So formulas must be formatted exactly. Excel is picky about a lot of things. And they all have the following. So they all begin with an equal sign. This tells Excel to behave like it's a formula. Because if I were to just type in, for example, 1 plus 1, it will just display 1 plus 1. But now I do equals 1 plus 1. You can see here. And then it calculates it. I have to give it the equal sign. Each formula also requires at least one mathematical operator. So with 1 plus 1, my operator was an add, was addition, the plus sign. Subtraction, which is minus. Multiplication is an asterisk. And division is a /. Or you can use functions like average, which is AVG, or today's date, which is today in parentheses, open and closed. And it must also include data to work on. So data can include cells like A4, for instance, or unchanging numbers. So the 1 plus 1, those ones are called constants because they don't change. And this will make more sense as we go along and use our formulas a bit more. And going on to mathematical operators, on the bottom of page 36, Excel can perform arithmetic on both the data contained in the reference cells and constants, which are numbers that are included in the formula but do not change. So for instance, I did the equals 1 plus 1, and it adds those to make 2. If I were to type in equals B3, so I'm going to go ahead and do that in cell I4 where I am now, equals, yeah. Then I hit enter, and it says mop because that is the data that's in B3. It doesn't matter if it's a number or not. Now I can't do B3 plus 1 because there is not a number in B3. That would make it, let me just show you. Value, that's an error message saying, okay, you're trying to put text in this because B3 contained text and not a number. So that gave me an error message. But if I were to go to C3, so I can see it presents when I double click on it, it shows the formula here. Then I hit the back button, C3 plus 1, I hit enter, and that's 21. Because in C3 there was 20, and I added 1 to it. And so I'm just going to delete that, get rid of the formula. And if I were to do, I mean, the book says B3 plus B4, but I'm going to do equals C3 plus C4 because I can't, of course, add words together. And you can see as I put in the names of the cells, it color codes them. So C3 is blue, and it's blue over here. C4 is red, and it's actually red on the actual C4. So now I press enter, and it adds them together, 20 plus 10, C3 plus C4. And then I can also add, you can go up in the formula bar. If you decide you want to make a change in the formula, it works there as well. So when I go in the formula bar, it highlights this. So here's the formula, and there are the numbers, and it's color-coded. And so if I wanted to add a third cell, and it doesn't matter how it's capitalized, it's not case sensitive at all. So let's say I wanted to add C5, so I type in C5, and that turns it purple. And then plus 1, that's a constant. And then I hit enter. So it added C3 plus C4 plus C5. So that's 50 plus 1. So on page 37, we're going to discuss operators, and I kind of went over them briefly a second ago. But on the top of page 37, there is a table of operators. So the plus sign, of course, is addition. The minus sign or the dash, that's subtraction. The asterisk is multiplication. I know I have an older typewriter at home that actually has a multiplication symbol on it, but now we just use the asterisk. The /, which is under the question mark on your keyboard, is division. Equal to is equal to, of course. And then there's less than, which is next to the M on your keyboard. And then next to that is greater than. And then you can combine those to be greater than or equal to or less than or equal to with the equal sign. Or you can make them facing each other to make this open diamond kind of shape. They're kind of kissing, I guess you can say. And that means it's not equal to at all. It's not the equal sign with a slash through it. It is not equal to. And then, of course, there's percentage, which is above the 5 on the very top row of your keyboard. But some mathematical functions that are built in, they are predefined formulas such as AVG for average or sum for sum. So here are some examples of functions. So again, on page 37, Square root, the way you would do that is you just equal SQRT and then in parentheses the name of the cell. So in this case, it's A1 in the book. Of course, that's not going to work on this spreadsheet because there's a word in A1. Today in parentheses, or equals today in parentheses, returns the current date. And equals average, averages the values of the reference cells. And you must tell Excel where to get the data to perform operations on. It's not that smart otherwise. The cell or range of cells is called the reference or references. So B3 refers to a single cell at column B and row 3. So here's B3. I'm going to click on it. It says sweep. It says mop. That's B3. But here we have A10 colon A20, and that is the range of cells from 10 to 20 in column A. So if you're writing a formula and you want to add all the numbers, you want to add A10 all the way down to A20, this way you don't have to write in A11, A12, and so on. You're telling it, okay, the colon is, it's like a sandwich. A10 and A20 are the bread, and everything in the middle is included. D colon D, for example, means all cells in column D. 2 colon 2 is all cells in row 2. And this is a little bit trickier. A5 colon A12, comma, D4 colon D9 is the range of cells from A5 to A12 and the range of cells from D4 to D9. So notice that a range of adjacent cells is delineated by a starting and ending cell separated by a colon. For example, A10 colon A20. And that the two ranges of cells are separated by a comma. So A5 colon A12, comma, D4 colon D9. Most of the time, you don't have to type in the ranges of reference cells. You can select them the same way you can select ranges. You can click and drag on them, and I'm going to kind of demonstrate that in a minute. We're using Control and Shift keys and the mouse to select adjacent and non-adjacent blocks of cells. Although it is still perfectly okay to type it if you know exactly which cell you're looking for. Now, changes in data will cause Excel to automatically recalculate and display updated results. So that way, for example, if I were to change, we have this 51 here, which was the C3, C4, and C5 plus 1. So if I were to go to C4 and decide maybe fixing the door was a little bit more complicated than it was supposed to be, so I put in 20 minutes and then I hit enter. Now it becomes 61 because I added 10 to that total. So it does update it as I go along. So on page 38, we go over formula errors, just like the one I illustrated a while ago when I tried to put a word or add a word into a formula. Excel tells you when a formula has been entered incorrectly by giving you an error message, and usually an accompanying sound effect. The message will be different depending on the type of error in the formula, and it may appear in a box that looks something like the one on page 38. It'll usually tell you the formula contains an error. Sometimes it might kind of tell you what the error is or give you a hint if it can figure out what you were trying to do, and it might even suggest a fix for it. But sometimes it'll just say, if you need help, go to help, click on the help tab. So sometimes it's more helpful than others. But very quickly, I'm going to go over the list of errors on page 38. So typo means to check for a typing mistake. Maybe you accidentally misspelled your function or something like that. Like maybe average is misspelled. Now the row of pound signs means the column is not wide enough for the size of the data, just make it wider. And then another error message, there is pound sign div/01. It just means the formula is trying to divide a number by 0 or by an empty cell. So just check that you're including the right cells in the formula. Name means the function or cell name is not spelled correctly. Value, which is the one I got earlier, the formula contains data that is not numeric or you have entered a function name incorrectly. So check your formula box to see your typing and then check your cells to make sure they are only numbers. Ref means the formula has a cell in it that is not valid. So check to make sure maybe you deleted a cell and forgot about it and forgot that there was a function or a formula that referenced the cell. So just kind of make sure that's okay. And a circular reference happens when one of the cells referenced in your formula is the same cell in which you want your formula to appear. So if I were writing my formula in cell I4 and I put equals I4, that is a circular reference. And a quick review of some of the most popular functions. So average adds all numeric values in a cell range and then divides that sum by the count of the values. So if I were to do an average on this, I would divide it by 4 because there are 4 numbers in there. Count counts the number of cells in a range that contain numeric values. And there's, I call it counta, count all, counts all the cells in a range that are not blank. So count does numeric values, count A also includes the text. Max is for maximum, it displays the largest value from a cell range. Text is ignored, so it's numbers only. And minimum or min is the opposite. It displays the smallest value from a cell range, once again ignoring the text. So next we have the order of operations. So sometimes formulas contain very complex mathematical operations that have to be done in a particular order to produce a correct result. So this is just like math class. Excel uses operator precedence to perform calculations, which determines the order in which the mathematical calculations occur. They are always performed from left to right in the following order. So there's parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division, and then addition and subtraction. So using parentheses, and this is just like math class, will create the proper order of your calculations for the outcome you're trying to achieve. So an example of using parentheses might be to calculate the sales tax on a retail sale. If you want to calculate the total cost of a computer and a printer with tax, but wish to know the sales tax on the total amount, I'm going to demonstrate how you would write the formula. I'm going to go into cell J1. So for this, first I put it in parentheses, the cost of the computer and the printer. Maybe it's $1,000.55 plus, maybe the printer was 329 cents. And then I close the parentheses because I'm telling it now, okay, do the math inside the parentheses first. Add these first and then multiply it. 9.08 and 8%. And so that's the sales tax. It's 104 point basically 07. But if I were to get rid of the parentheses, what it would do was it would first multiply. So let me go in here. You can see on the formula bar where my formula is. If I want to get rid of the parentheses, I can just click backspace, get rid of the parentheses. And what it would do in this case is it would first multiply $300.29 by 5. It's a different number. And then add the 1,055, giving you an incorrect total. So by adding the parentheses, we told it, okay, add these two numbers first, and then multiply that total by the percentage, basically, to calculate the total sales tax. But if you do have too many or too few parentheses, so let me demonstrate that. So for example, I'm just going to open it right here. Hit enter. And now it has kind of figured out, well, it tried. But see, it put the parentheses in the wrong place in this example here. It put it at the end. So I'm going to say no, correct that. And now it's going to tell me, okay, but you're still missing parentheses. So then I can fix it like this. But also keep in mind it is possible to use an incorrect order of operations. Maybe you put the parentheses in the wrong place, resulting in an incorrect calculation. So now I'm going to turn over to page 40 for copying, pasting, and cutting. And this is very, very handy. So you can remove data and paste it in other places in the worksheet. You can copy and paste data into Word or PowerPoint. I have done that before. And this can save time and reduce errors. So on the practice worksheet, I'm going to highlight all of my 9s. And there are a few different ways of doing it. I can right click and select cut, or I can go up to the ribbon and select this little pair of scissors up here. There are 2 different ways of doing that. You can kind of see toward the left, there's a little pair of scissors. Or I can do Control X as an X-ray. So when I do any one of those, you can kind of see this moving dotted line appears around it. That's called a running frame or a marquee that surrounds it. So now to paste it, I'm going to click on cell A12. And then I can either go to this paste up here. I can do Control plus V as in Victor on my keyboard, or I can right click and paste. So cut removed it and then pasted it down there. It totally cut it out. But if I wanted to keep this here and also put a copy of it somewhere, I would go to copy. You can see these 2 pieces of paper here. I would either click on the copy, or I could do Control C on my keyboard, or I can click on the far left of the page and do copy that way. You can see I have the running border here, and I paste it here. And now it does give you pasting options sometimes. Like you can see here, the paste options. This will also copy and paste the formulas and the number formatting, which we don't really have right now. And maybe you can just cut out the borders, you can keep the column widths, you can transpose it. And there's all different types of ways to do that. Paste a picture, a linked picture, you can paste a link. There's all sorts of different ways to do that. And I'm going to save the changes really quickly. Then I'm going to go over to page 41. Now we're going to get into deleting data. So you can delete data within cells with the keyboard delete key. Select the cells you wish to clear and then press delete. So I'm just going to click on A1, press delete, that clears it. Or I can do Control A or this select all triangle. That selects the whole thing. And then delete the whole thing. But it does leave the cell formatting intact. So you can see in I1 where I had that fraction earlier, when I click back on it, it says fraction. So make sure to be careful about that. Sometimes it will kind of mess with your data if you're not careful. So here, general, you see, it does keep it as general there, so that's good. But always be careful if you delete something with a special format that I change it back to general. Otherwise, it's going to come up with something extremely interesting that we might or might not want. But if you delete a cell, it means the cell is removed, which means it removes the data format and everything. And the remaining cells are adjusted or moved to take up the space. Excel is fine with blank cells, but it will not allow there to be no cell at all, so it must shift it somewhere. So when I go to delete, see, it gives me all these different options. But I have nothing to delete. So now on the bottom of page 41, I'm going to demonstrate the practice activity, which is the combined train schedule. So first I'm going to create a copy of the practice worksheet immediately following the main practice worksheet. So I have 2 of them. So I'm going to right click on practice exercises. Then I'm going to scroll up to move or copy. And then I want it before the cost of labor sheet. And then check off create a copy and hit OK. And then going over to page 42, there's no data there. So very quickly, I'm going to make a train schedule as in illustrated on 42. So first I type in train A. And now the example on page 42 has that first row shaded. So I'm just going to highlight all the way out to E, and then click on my paint can up here again, the fill color, and then also on the B for bold, so that way it makes it a little bit easier to see. And then I do my headings. So I just clicked on A2. I'm just going to do arrival station tab, arrival time tab. And you can kind of see how these are kind of long, so the columns, I'll cut them off. So what I can do is highlight all of these, and then go to, on the top here, cells right here, you can see this little cells section. And then, it's kind of more toward the right center, I go to format, column width. So I'm just going to auto fit that. So that way it auto fits to everything that's in it. And then ticket costs, we can already tell that's going to be a dollars and cents kind of thing. So I can click on the E on top of column E, and then I go up above it to where it says general up here, and click on that down arrow and tell it currency. So now I'm ready to enter some data. So the arrival station, and you can go up or down, just kind of go column by column. I like to go across. So station 1, it arrives at 7:30 a.m. Space a.m. And departs. And the ticket cost, all I have to do is type in 2.45. It automatically adds the $ for me because I made that a currency format. So I hit enter to go back to that next row. So I'm tabbing to go across. And then again, with this, it's $3. I just type in the 3, hit enter, and it automatically formats it for me. Station 3, 5:30 p.m. Station 4, it arrives and departs 5:25, space p.m. Make sure you have your space. It's 3.25. And so now maybe I want to make a different schedule for maybe there's train B or train C. So I highlight all of this, and right now I'm just clicking and dragging across and down so it's all framed. And then in this instance, I can right click or I can hit copy here, or I can do Control C. And now you can see it has the border on it now, the marquee border. And then I click back on practice exercises. And then I can just, in their cell A1, just hit paste. And there it is. I still have to, it doesn't always do the formatting. You can tell it. Let me hit undo. Right here. So there are different ways. I'm just going to demonstrate them transposing it, which kind of made it all topsy-turvy. We don't want to do that. So I'm just going to hit undo. Let me paste that again. So there's formulas, no borders, We're going to keep those column widths too, the keep source column width, so that way it doesn't cut them off. And then we're going to save the file. At the end of chapter 3 on page 43, there is a very basic practice exercise. If you would like to do that on your own, that would be fine. It's still just kind of entering data, kind of like the shopping lists. And so that is the end of chapter 3. And now we're going to go on to part 4. And thank you very much. And hopefully I will see you in part 4.